The incredible scale and destructibility of Battlefield 4's multiplayer almost feels like developer DICE is showing off. Especially in the PC version's 64-player battles, it gives us the power to create the same sort of jaw-dropping scenes we usually see in scripted single-player campaigns. As expected, Battlefield 4 is gorgeous, ambitious, and memorable, even on the smaller scale Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions. Meanwhile, the single-player campaign embarrasses itself by abandoning the dynamism that defines Battlefield.
Come on! We're not there yet!
Battlefield 4 is mostly the same game across these three platforms, but on 360 and PS3, its online player count drops from a max of 64 to 24, and maps with 5 or more capture points scale back to just 3. In concept, this sounds like a busted version of Battlefield, but it's tuned well to the scope current-gen consoles can muster. It isn't as mentally or tactically stimulating when there's less at stake or fewer things to think about, but the moment-to-moment action and the feel of many weapons and vehicles is just as great. Battlefield 4 on current-gen has enough to keep it as interesting as it has ever been on console. On 8-year-old machines, it obviously won't look as good as it does on PC, but it certainly doesn't look bad. Most of the time, anyway. It's pushing these machines to their limits, and it's noticeably better than Battlefield 3. The sense of scale and detail is really only undermined by a few visual anomalies. Stuff still falls apart, but it doesn't always look the best. Small structures will have awkward texture changes before they crumble, but the bigger scale destruction, like a hotel collapsing, a smokestack falling over, or a dam breaking, all look really, really freaking cool. If you want to play Battlefield 4 on your Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3, by all means, go for it. It's a great shooter. This is the main event. Battlefield 4 includes all of the same impressive class-based infantry and vehicular multiplayer combat that made the franchise famous, but here it hinges on spectacular destruction unlike anything the series has ever seen. Hainan Resort is one of the best maps in Battlefield history because of what Battlefield 4 makes possible. It's an instant classic with tons of vehicles, capture points, open space, tight corners, and a centralized control point in the form of a destructible 12-story hotel. When the building goes down, it cuts off sniper perches and closes off entryways. It forces a change in strategy and pace that's all in the control of the players. I can't say all the maps make such excellent use of destructibility though. Breaking a wall in the flood zone map causes a rise in the water level that completely ruins the level for me. Swimming is the least fun way to get around, and you're going to do a lot of it if your team isn't dominating the rooftops. Another issue is that every one of Battlefield's mostly stellar maps is obviously designed with the traditional conquest mode in mind. Sometimes the fun of blowing up enemy bases and obliteration, pushing forward in rush, and infantry-only combat and domination brings frustrations like spawn camping, stalemates, and flat-out uninteresting battles. Battlefield 4 relies on heavy destruction to compensate there, but it also benefits from other changing variables. Weather gets worse as a typhoon overwhelms Paracel Storm, and the rising sun makes it easier to spot enemies as matches progress on Dawnbreaker. The mobile control point in Goldman Railway makes for some interesting exposed firefights on a train track too. This is the most kinetic Battlefield has ever been, and the most exciting. Everything is always in flux as teams consider the benefit of bringing an outpost down on itself, Bad Company 2 style. None of this fundamentally changes the flow of Battlefield's signature vehicular warfare, but it does, in most cases, complement it really well. Battlefield 2's Commander mode returns in Battlefield 4, and it does an awesome job of empowering you beyond putting a gun in your hands. Switching to this top-down tactical view and issuing movement and attack orders to squads isn't quite as fun as blowing maps to pieces, but it's emblematic of exactly how team-based Battlefield 4 is. There's a symbiotic relationship between commander and soldier. Commanders call shots, and squads who listen can benefit from their benevolent overlord in the form of vehicle and supply drops, or promotions that accelerate their unlocks. Likewise, squads can help their commander by capturing crucial control points that, say, give their commander the ability to launch missiles. That coordination requires more talking than usual, but a team that works well with their commander will totally destroy an enemy who doesn't. It's great to have commander mode back, and it would be silly if Battlefield ever let it go again. For all the great dynamic play that happens in multiplayer, Battlefield 4's single-player campaign is soulless showboating that tries too hard to artificially force it. Gunning through the simple shooting gallery encounters is pretty dull most of the time, especially since AI teammates don't pull their own weight. You have to tell them who to attack and when, and even then, they're not terribly good at their jobs. Only a handful of redeeming fights let you off the linearity leash, but tearing around an open area in a vehicle, or using verticality to my advantage, reminded me that the freedom I really want is one multiplayer menu away. The story of a mounting war between the Chinese, Americans, and Russians is meant to be this evocative and emotional experience for your squad, but it ends up as nonsense that lacks the subtlety and grace necessary to create empathy. I found it impossible to feel for these characters when gameplay is so centered around points and unlocks. Impressive lighting effects, environmental destruction, and raging weather might make you feel great about your expensive gaming machine, but make no mistake, this is an aggressively mediocre campaign with absolutely nothing to say.
Oh my God! Stop
As usual and as expected, Battlefield's terrific competitive game is the heart and soul of the series. DICE has finally succeeded in hooking up Battlefield 2's Commander mode with Bad Company 2's Destruction and Battlefield 3's impressive looks. On current-gen platforms, the visuals take a major hit, and while the smaller scale is certainly still great, it's not as impressive as 64 players, and it feels a bit like a lesser game. It's disappointing that its single-player production values are so much more ambitious than its actual gameplay, but that campaign is an afterthought tacked onto some excellent multiplayer warfare. IGN has many more videos of Battlefield 4, but here's an extended clip of an obliteration match on Xbox 360.
West of your current position appears to be a hostile LED. The bomb has been armed.